Hey everyone, welcome or welcome back to mycuncensored's Women in STEM podcast series. Today I'm joined by Aina Musaeva, a very passionate data science consultant and previous astrophysicist. So without further ado, let's get into it. What is your occupation? A bit about yourself and some contributions to being in a mainly male-dominated field.
Okay, so my name is Aina Musaeva and I'm a data scientist. So what is a data scientist, right? So it's someone who uses maths, coding, and creativity to solve some interesting problems. And often you make discoveries along the way using data or information. Now, I would say that this career is really good for girls who are really curious and like enjoy puzzles, learning new skills, or want to help others with their work, right? And what data scientists do, including myself, is that we collect information, or we refer to it as data, and then we look for patterns and trends that then can help us or other people to make better decisions, right? And in terms of what I do, let's say as a data scientist, there is several things, right? So there would be writing computer code, then using statistics, right? So maths and statistics, and also often we work as a part of a team, right? So it's not just me on my own to solve problems in real life, right? So let me give you one example. Say you have a credit card, right, or a debit card. A data scientist could help a bank identify if there is a fraudulent transaction on your card, and then try to stop it to protect your money. And you're right, it is true. Lots of data scientists are men. And right now, unfortunately, the sad truth is the only approximately 20% of data science professionals globally are women.
Awesome. Um, What would you say your story is in finding your passion and ultimately pursuing the field of data science?
Yes, I actually loved science and specifically astrophysics back when I was a kid, right? As long as I can remember. And I really wanted to study astrophysics after I finished school back in Russia. But my well-meaning parents wanted me to study something that will guarantee a job, preferably in a bank, because that's how things were back in the day in Russia. So it wasn't until I moved to Australia I could finally pursue a degree in astrophysics, and I did it at the University of Sydney. And what I love about science, like if I try to reflect on why and what was it so attractive to me in science, a lot of it was around the joy of discovery, right? And understanding something really complex in a really simple way, right? So, for example, if you've done physics in your school curriculum, you would know that there is like a very small, tiny formula that describes how things move around. For example, in a solar system, I find it absolutely fascinating that you can have a tiny little simple formula that describes a huge complex system. Um, and then, so at the University of Sydney, during my PhD year, so after you finish your kind of degree, you can proceed on to do research, which I chose to do. But during those years, I sort of fell into data science, where together with my supervisor, we decided to explore, um, at the time, new innovative ways of searching for black holes using machine learning methods. And this turned out to be a really great opportunity for me to then have multiple career choices, right? Because if you think about it, and in my example that I have provided with the fraudulent transactions, when you are able to use statistics and mathematics on data to predict patterns, you could do this with any data, right? It doesn't have to be a data that was generated by a black hole in a galaxy far, far away. It could be by a human, right, somewhere next door.
Awesome. Um, In terms of the field, and being a woman in STEM, what would you say your greatest challenges have been, that you've witnessed or that you've actually experienced yourself?
Yeah. So if you think about data science as a field altogether, right, it is essentially a field of technology. And
Mm,
if you think about technology, what does it do? It's everywhere around us, right? And because it's everywhere around us, used by everyone for everything, it shapes our life, right? And shapes our society as well, right? And if you have mostly men working on it, right, which we covered that this is still the case, even though there is a little bit of progress, what you end up having is these professionals, they shape the world that is built by men and for men, right? I'll give you a couple of examples, and this is very well documented, so I'm not making any of this up. It can often lead to, let's say, poorer health outcomes. And the reason for that is because still this day, it is getting better, but it is still the case. Um, Medical research and drug trials often exclude women, right? So they are based on the information on the physiology of men, which means that then you could have misdiagnosis, right, and ineffective care for women
mm,
due to missing data, right? If your data only contains information on physiology of men. And this goes further than that, right? If I think about public transport, which is something that I have worked in the past, if you have your public policies, public transport policies shaped by men, right, you will then often have uh, your resource allocation, city planning, and emergency responses that don't account for women's transport and their experiences, right? For example, you could have public transport that doesn't cater for women dropping off their children at school, right, and then making their way to work, or it could even not serve women's safety during the commute needs. Um, but if you, on the other hand, had more and more women in data science, then that bias would be less, right? And
mm,
therefore, it's a really good, and I think many studies have been done on that, that the more women or other underrepresented communities you have in data science or in broader technology, it leads to a path of to building a fairer, more effective technology and society overall.
mm. Yeah, definitely. I think definitely, especially with like analyzing trends or data, there's so many ways that something can go wrong. So having more females can eliminate that bias. So yeah, that's definitely very interesting. What would you say the most exciting parts of your occupation is, and also parts that might not be as exciting or as interesting, but if someone were to go into the field, they would probably need to consider, oh, the job isn't always exciting, and these are some considerations I need to make if I want to go into this path.
Yeah. So I would say, first of all, just a more general statement. Any job will have bits that are exciting, right? And bits that are
Mm.
annoying or you would struggle with. Therefore, that definitely, like, I don't think there is a role or job that is perfectly exciting and there is no struggle. But as I mentioned with this, right? So essentially by me choosing this profession and going into it, I get to contribute towards more fair and more effective technology in society. So that's one part, right? And you might think, oh, but it's just one person. Actually, in this world, even one person can make a huge contribution, and it starts with one person and then continues on. So I love that through my work, I get to actually contribute towards a greater outcome. And before, in my previous role, which I have switched actually out of last year, I worked in consulting. And if you're not familiar with consulting, it's essentially large companies that then provide advice to large government organizations or other organizations on solving huge problems, right, that could impact millions of Australians, right? So you can say you can participate in some program that will shape, let's say, choices on the public transport system that would then be used by millions of Australians. So that part is amazing. Then struggles, in terms of struggles, definitely still the case that it could be a limited career growth, right? And I'm not saying that this is because women in data science or in broader technology are not high performing. They are. They're just less likely to be promoted to senior leadership roles due to poor visibility, because often some parts of it is just due to the way society is shaped, right? For example, women can be a little reluctant to toot their horn, right? To say, yes, I have done something really amazing. And also because of the biases, their peers could be seen as more capable and more worthy of promotion. Again, this is probably something that is not just specific to data science, but more broader technology. But I can definitely say that I have seen this in some of my roles where, let's say, you watch your peers being promoted who are men and yourself overlooked for it. So there are definitely systemic issues that continue to be the case. They are getting a bit better, but not probably as fast as we would like them to be. So I think it's important to know this, right? So that if you're getting into it, there are some issues. However, I don't think that they should be something that someone would consider as a deal breaker and not to go into data science. And in terms of, you said that if people are interested in pursuing this career, I think it would be good to expose yourself to it, right? To find out what this is about, right? Because some people may still not understand what data science is about, right? So I would say a good way to make up your mind is to expose yourself to some of the role models within the field, right? And it's so easy these days with social media, right? You can follow people online. Maybe I'll give you a couple of names that I love because I get really inspired by these women in data science. You could read a couple of books. I can also give a couple of recommendations that I think would absolutely boggle your mind, trying to understand the state of the field, or even watching movies. There are many documentaries. Again, I can give a couple of suggestions that could give you that actual real picture of what women who work in data science are like and what they do every day. And then you can kind of decide for yourself if this is a good pathway forward for you.
Awesome. So, um, final question is if you were speaking to younger women or younger women,
Mhm.
what would you say to them, in terms of if they're unsure or not fully confident in entering or pursuing a field of STEM? What is some advice or words of wisdom you would give them?
First, I think recognizing that some of the doubt that comes from, let's say, when you are not sure, may come from your either inner biases or external society biases. For example, maybe the reason why you're doubting if you want to pursue a career in data science is because you don't see it as a career for women, right? A proper career for women, or maybe your friends, peers, parents don't see it that way, right? And it's very hard to go down a path that isn't deemed as appropriate by your peers or the society. So I would say my first advice is if you do feel passionate about it and you want to do it and you doubt yourself, just do it anyway, right? Give it a go and then see how you feel. As I mentioned also, do get inspired by other women, because I think there is nothing more powerful than seeing others who have done well or who are doing incredible work than to um, consider this career path. So maybe I'll use this opportunity to give a couple of names, right? So the first person that I really love, her name is Joy Bulamwini. So she's a scientist, a research scientist, and she has this incredible Netflix documentary called Coded Bias. Check it out. And it will blow your mind in terms of how much bias there is in data science still these days. So her um, focus there, at least in this particular documentary, and then in a book that she has published recently called Unmasked in AI, she talks about um, how some of these computer vision technologies are very biased towards white people, right? Or very biased against Black people. So she's the first one, right? So absolutely incredible. Then, as I mentioned, I think one other barrier that I have seen with young women, they think, oh, maths is too hard, statistics is too hard for me. I just can't, deal with it. It is feels like an impossible barrier. There is Casey Kozyrkov, and she was Google's first decision scientist. And one of the things that she is absolutely incredible at is being able to explain very complex statistical concepts in a really fun and engaging way, and also in plain English, right? So you don't have to have much background. And then I feel that once you understand those concepts, which can be very powerful to implement on data, then it doesn't seem as daunting, right? And last but not least, I'll also mention Ellie Miller. And she is just this incredible force of nature. And she has this vision to empower 1 million people with AI through her work. And honestly, when you listen to her, you just want to be a part of her movement. And she always is very generous with her advice in terms of how to use AI for the better, for the good of the society. And a couple of books, right? I mentioned to you a couple of those statistics before, right? With public transport, with medical research. So almost like a Bible of women in data science is the book called Invisible Women. So Invisible Women is a very popular book. So check that out. And then a fairly recent book, which I really love, is called Data Feminism. And it's more the reason why I really love this book. Yes, it also has lots of incredibly well-researched statistics about the state of data science in the world, but it also contains advice to your everyday data scientist. So you as a person who writes code, you as a person who gives advice to other organizations, you as a person who analyzes the data and makes insights out of it, there is certain responsibilities that you have, and they explain, there is several authors of this book, how you can actually act on this to turn the tide, right? So to make the society more fairer rather than the other way around, which is what we see right now. Technology only exacerbates the biases and inequalities that already exist.
Mm.
And last one, maybe I'll say is, I know I mentioned my story, which was through university degree. Having worked in technology, I can see that there is another very, very good alternative pathway for people who want to pursue data science or technology as a career choice, and that is through traineeships, right? So, for example, when I worked at KPMG, we established this program where students who just finish high school, right? So they don't have to even having done um, technology subjects or science subjects, they can choose to come to an organization for 2 or 3 years on to this traineeship program and participate in real life problem solving, right? So they learn on the job instead of going to the university for a couple of years, right? And then joining the workforce. I honestly, and I've seen a few graduates like that in Sydney actually, so definitely do check this out. They have done incredible things, right? So of course, as you begin, you don't know anything, right? So but because you're surrounded by these people who do know how to coach you and who want to spend their time nurturing your growth, it's a really good way um, to learn how to do this. And in fact, I remember when we started this program back in the day, and one of these traineeship students, he had a peer of the same age who chose to go to the university, right? And this person chose to go through the traineeship, and by the end of the second or third year, right, whatever it takes to take the degree, you could see how much the traineeship student have gone further, right? Because he's spent all of this time focusing on real life outcomes rather than sometimes theoretical things that they teach you within the university degree, which get outdated very quickly. So my advice is definitely watch out for those. Just Google for traineeships, technology traineeships, see which companies offer them, and um, maybe consider doing those instead of going to the university, which you can always do a bit later.
Yeah, awesome. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up during this interview?
Maybe just one last thing. I know I've given you lots of information, but if any of your listeners have some questions and want to ask, feel free to find me on LinkedIn and ask questions. I will be very happy to answer them.
Absolutely. In our podcast, we do have a description, so I'm happy to put your LinkedIn as well so they can contact you if needed. But thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and I will let you know once we've uploaded the episode, and I can link it as well so that you can listen to it if you would like.